welcome, 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 welcome. There's no longer a word welcome. To Ambition Incarnate. Otherwise known as our first session of attempting to read the entirety of The Hobbit on stream. This is going to be great. Wonder if I'll probably download the VODs after. I think. So anyway, I'm actually going to record this long term. Yeah, might as well. Why not? I'll download the VODs once I'm done. Sorry. Bag of chips. Move that away. Move it over here. Move things over here. Move things over there. Oh, yes. There is something I wanted to do. I need to change my let's make sure this isn't popping. Okay, good. Oh man. Oops. I would like to change the schedule I've set up because it clearly does not work. So channel. Where's my schedule? Where's my schedule? Creator dashboard. Content. Stream manager. Maybe stream manager. Okay. I got it. Let's see. Stream manager, and we're looking for where on earth is the schedule set up? Because they need to change that schedule. That them there schedule. Okay. Yeah, I am signed in. Why, thank you. Settings, stream, no channel. Schedule, here we go. Yeah. I have it set at 7. Alright, we're gonna delete the schedule. Clearly I am not keeping to the schedule. So yeah. Anyway. Last stream hit a record 3 concurrent viewers. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy. Oh. Oh, we literally just need 25 followers. All right. Well, to any that see this, then, if you are interested in either math, physics, random gaming, or reading of The Hobbit in its entirety, please do go ahead and follow, because we're so close. We're so close. We're so close. We're almost at 25 followers. Our 25 followers is the only thing we have left to do. Get to affiliate, which means I'll get like 3 cents worth of income. It'll be great. It'll be awesome. Anyway, where were we? We were doing things, right? Yes, things, stuff, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so the plan is to read The Hobbit in its entirety over a period of time. So this will be over several streams. My thought is essentially to read a chapter a stream. We'll see how that goes. This chapter has singing in it, which is going to be awesome. I don't know if you've heard me sing yet, but it ain't great. But nonetheless, we will, as I say, persevere. Okay. So, oop, got a phone call. Give me 1 second. Apologies. Sorry about that. What were we doing? We were doing things and stuff, right? So, yes, the plan is, as of right now, I've deleted my schedule because my schedule was not actually a schedule that was being followed. Shocking, I know. I have this really weird sense of punctuality as we go down this rabbit hole here, where I can't keep to streaming at specific days, but if I'm going to stream at a specific time, I'm going to start on time. You know, plus or minus like 1 minute. But at any rate, so yes, so the plan is to read The Hobbit one chapter at a time, still interspersing it with mathematics. And we'll see how this goes. The chapters are a little bit longer than what we've read so far, so it might be a little bit of a challenge, I guess, to go after this. But yeah, so that's the plan. So far I found this website, and we'll just kind of use this website. I hope this text is correct. It's, I don't know say why it wouldn't be. Let's actually see. Do they have, so if we go to The Hobbit, do they have, oh, these have chapters 1 and 5? Well, that's silly. Let's see if we can find a better text than, well, there's always this one. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to, just for the sake of safety here, we're just going to go ahead and turn it off. Let's see. We could do. Is this a complete PDF? Okay. Okay. So we could go ahead and save this. let's see. Where's our stream stuff? Stream stuff. Okay, so we're going to the just the Hobbit. Good. And so now, I guess we can keep it open in this. So, okay, there we go. Okay. So now a little bit of zooming and then a little bit of shifting stuff around here on this. We certainly don't need so much white space over there, but we can do like this and we'll, there we go. Sorry if I'm like screeching in your ear. See if we go down to actual text, unexpected party. There's a note on this. Well, that's fascinating. Anyway, we want to get to about here, so it's nice and large text. Oh boy. I like text at large. The question is, can we get this to be like there and like there? All right, so that looks like it has all of the text on it, so that's good. Beautiful. And okay, let's begin this show. Light this candle, as the saying goes. All right. So today we make a spirited attempt at chapter 1 of The Hobbit. Let's go. Chapter 1, An Unexpected Party. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing to sit on, or nothing in it to sit on or eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. It had a perfectly round door, like a porthole, painted green with a shiny yellow brass knob in the exact middle. The door opened to a tube-shaped hall like a tunnel, very comfortable tunnel, without smoke, with paneled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for hats and coats. The hobbit was fond of visitors. The tunnel wound on and on, going fairly but not quite straight into the side of the hill, as the people for many miles around called it, and many little round doors opened out of it, first on one side and then the other. No going upstairs for the hobbit. Bedrooms, bathrooms, cellars, pantries, lots of these. Wardrobes, he had whole rooms devoted to clothes. Kitchens, dining rooms, all were on the same floor, and indeed on the same passage. The best rooms were all on the left-hand side going in, for these were the only ones to have windows, deep-set round windows looking out over his garden and the meadows beyond, sloping down to the river. The hobbit was a very well-to-do hobbit, and his name was Baggins. The Bagginses had lived in the neighborhood of the hill for time out of mind, and people considered them very respectable, not only because they were rich, but also because they never had any adventures or did anything unexpected. You could tell what a Baggins would say on any question without the bother of asking him. This is a story of how Baggins had an adventure, found himself doing and saying things altogether unexpected. He may have lost his neighbor's respect, but he gained, well, you'll see whether he gained anything at the end. The mother of our particular hobbit. What is a hobbit? I suppose hobbits need some description nowadays, since they have become rare and shy of the big people, as they call us. They are, or were, a little people, about half our height, and smaller than the bearded dwarves. Hobbits have no beards. There's little or no magic about them, except the ordinary, everyday sort, which helps them disappear quietly and quickly when large, stupid folks like you and me come blundering along, making noise like elephants, which they can hear a mile off. They're inclined to be, ooh, there's a missing word here. They're inclined to be large, I assume. Oh, they're inclined to be fat in the stomach. They dress in bright colors, chiefly green and yellow, wear no shoes because their feet grow naturally leathery soles, and thick, warm brown hair like the stuff on their heads, which is curly. Have long, clever brown fingers, good natured faces, and deep, fruity laughs, especially after dinner, which they have twice a day when they can get it. Now, you know enough to go on with. As I was saying, the mother of this hobbit, of Bilbo Baggins, that is, was the fabulous Belladonna Took, one of the three remarkable daughters of Old Took, head of the hobbits who lived across the water, the small river that ran at the foot of the hill. It was often said in other families that long ago one of the Took ancestors must have taken a fairy wife. That was, of course, absurd, but certainly there was something not entirely hobbit like about them, and once in a while, members of the old Took clan would have adventures. They discreetly disappeared and the family hushed it up, but the fact remained that the Tooks were not as respectable as the Bagginses, although they were undoubtedly richer. Not that Belladonna Took ever had any adventures after she became Mrs. Bungo Baggins. Bungo, that was Bilbo's father, built the most luxurious hobbit hole for her, and partly with her money, that was to be found either under the hill or over the hill or across the water, and there they remain until the end of their days. Still, it is probable that Bilbo, her only son, although he looked and behaved exactly like a second edition of his solid and comfortable father, got something a bit queer in his makeup from the Took side, something that only waited for a chance to come out. The chance never arrived until Bilbo Baggins was grown up, being about 50 years old or so, and living in the beautiful hobbit hole built by his father, which I've just described for you, until he had in fact apparently settled down immovably. By some curious chance, one morning long ago in the quiet of the world when there was less noise and more green, and the hobbits were still numerous and prosperous, and Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormously long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, neatly brushed, Gandalf came by. Gandalf. You have heard only a quarter of what I have heard about him, and I have heard very little of what there is to hear. You would be prepared for any sort of remarkable tale. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place wherever he went in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages and ages, not since his friend Old Took had died, in fact, and the hobbits had almost forgotten what he looked like. He had been away over the hill across the water on business of his own, since they were all very small hobbit boys and hobbit girls. All that the unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. He had a tall, pointed blue hat, a long gray cloak, a silver scarf over which a white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining, the grass was very green, but Gandalf looked at him from under long, bushy eyebrows that stuck out further than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or do you feel good this morning, or that this is a morning to be good on?" "All of them at once," said Bilbo, "and a very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco out of doors into the bargain. If you have a pipe about you, sit down and have a fill of mine. There's no hurry, we have all day before us." Then Bilbo sat down on a seat by his door, crossed his legs, blew out a beautiful gray ring of smoke that sailed up into the air without breaking and floated away over the hill. "Very pretty," said Gandalf. "But I have no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I am looking for someone to share an adventure that I am arranging, and it's very difficult to find anyone." "I should think so in these parts. We are plain, quiet folk and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. Made you late for dinner. I can't see what anyone sees in them," said our Mr. Baggins, and stuck one thumb behind his braces and blew out another even bigger smoke ring. Then he took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice of the old man. He had decided he was not quite his sort and wanted him to go away, but the old man did not move. He stood leaning on his stick, gazing at the hobbit without saying anything, till Bilbo got quite uncomfortable and even a little cross. Good morning, he said at last. We don't want any adventures here, thank you. You might try over the hill or across the water. By this he meant the conversation was at an end. What a lot of things you use good morning for, said Gandalf. Now you mean that you want to get rid of me and that it won't be good until I move off. Not at all. Not at all, my dear sir. Let me see. I don't think I know your name. Yes, my dear sir, and I know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins, and you know my name, although you don't remember that I belong to it. I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me. To think that I should have lived to be good morning by Belladonna Took's son, as if I were selling buttons at the door. Gandalf! Good gracious me, not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened themselves and never came undone till ordered? Not that fellow who used to tell such wonderful tales at parties about dragons and goblins and giants and the rescue of princesses and the unexpected luck of widows' sons? Not the man that used to make such particularly excellent fireworks. I remember those. Old Took used to have them at Midsummer's Eve. Splendid! They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons and labradums of fire and hang in the twilight all evening. You'll notice already that Mr. Baggins was not quite so prosy as he liked to believe, also that he was quite fond of flowers. Dearie me, he went on, not the Gandalf who has been responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures, anything from climbing trees to visiting elves or sailing on ships, sailing to other shores. Bless me, life used to be quite I mean, you used to upset things badly in these parts once upon a time. I beg your pardon, but I had no idea you were still in business. Where else should I be? Said the wizard. All the same, I'm pleased to find you remember something about me. You seem to remember my fireworks kindly, at any rate. A land that is not without hope. Indeed, for your great grandfather Took's sake and for the sake of poor Belladonna, I will give you what you have asked for. I beg your pardon, I haven't asked for anything. Yes, you have, twice now. My pardon, I give it to you. In fact, I will go so far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, very good for you, and profitable too. Very likely if you ever get over it. Sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you, not today. Good morning, but please come to tea anytime you like. Why not tomorrow? Come tomorrow. Goodbye. With that, the hobbit turned and scuttled inside his round green door and shut it as quickly as he dared, not to seem rude. Wizards, after all, are wizards. What on earth did I ask him to tea for? He said to himself as he went into his pantry. He'd only just had breakfast, but he thought a cake or two and a drink of something would do him good after his fright. Gandalf, in the meantime, was still standing upon the door, laughing long but quietly. After a while, he stepped up and with the spike of his staff scratched a queer sign in the hobbit's beautiful green front door. Then he strode away just about the time when Bilbo was finishing his second cake and beginning to think he had escaped adventures very well. The next day, he had almost forgotten about Gandalf. He did not remember things very well unless he put them down in his engagement tablet like this: Gandalf Tea Wednesday. Yesterday he had been too flustered to do anything of the kind. Just before tea time, there came a tremendous ring on the front doorbell, and he remembered. He rushed to put on a kettle and put out another cup and saucer and an extra cake or two and ran to the door. I am so sorry to keep you waiting, he was going to say, when he saw that it was not Gandalf at all. It was a dwarf with a blue beard stuck into a golden belt and very bright eyes under a dark green hood. As soon as the door was open, he pushed inside as if he had been expected. He hung his hooded cloak on the nearest peg and said, "Dwalin at your service," with a low bow. "Bilbo Baggins at yours," said the hobbit, too surprised to ask any questions for the moment. When the silence that followed had become uncomfortable, he added, "I am just about to make tea. Pray come and have some with me." A little stiff, perhaps, but he meant it kindly. "And what do you do if an uninvited dwarf came in to hang up his things in your hall without a word of explanation?" They had not been there long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake when there came another, even louder ring at the bell. "Excuse me," said the hobbit, and off he went to the door. So you have got here at last, was what he was going to say to Gandalf this time, but it was not Gandalf. Instead, it was a very old-looking dwarf on the step with a white beard and a scarlet hood, and he too hopped inside as soon as the door was open, just as if he had been invited. I see they have begun to arrive already, he said when he caught sight of Dwalin's green hood hanging up. He hung the red one next to it, and Balin at your service, he said with a hand to his breast. Thank you, said Bilbo with a gasp. It was not the correct thing to say, but they had begun to arrive had flustered him badly. He liked visitors, but he liked to know them before they arrived, and he preferred to ask them himself. He had a horrible thought that the cakes might run short, and that he, as host, knew his duty and stuck to it, however painful he might. And he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck to it, however painful he might go without. Come in and have some tea, he managed to say after taking a deep breath. A little beer would suit me better if it's all the same to you, my good sir, said Balin with a white beard. But I don't mind some seed cake if you have any. Lots, Bilbo found himself answering to his own surprise, and he found himself scuttling off to the cellar to fill a pint beer mug, and to the pantry to fetch 2 beautiful round seed cakes that he had baked that afternoon for after-supper morsel. When he got back, Balin and Dwalin were talking at the table like old friends. As a matter of fact, they were brothers. Bilbo plumped down the beer and the cake in front of them, and had just plumped down the beer and the cake in front of them when a loud ring came at the bell again, and then another ring. Gandalf for certain this time, he thought as he puffed along the passage. But it was not. It was 2 more dwarves, both with blue hoods, silver belts, and yellow beards, and each of them carried a bag of tools and a spade. In they hopped as soon as the door began to open. Bilbo was hardly surprised at all. What can I do for you, my dwarves? He said. Killy at your service, said one. And Filly, added the other, and they both swept off their blue hoods and bowed. At yours and your families, replied Bilbo, remembering his manners this time. Dwalin and Balin are here already, I see, said Killy. Let us join the throng. Throng, thought Mr. Baggins. I don't like the sound of that. I really must sit down for a minute and collect my wits, have a drink. He only just had a sip in a corner when the 4 dwarves sat around the table and talked about mines and gold and troubles with goblins and the deprecations of dragons and lots of other things which he did not understand and did not want to, for they sounded much too adventurous, when ding-dong-a-ling-dong, his bell rang again, as if some naughty little hobbit boy were trying to pull it off the handle. Someone's at the door, he said, blinking. Some 4, I should say, by the sound, said Filly. Besides, we saw them coming along behind us at a distance. The poor little hobbit sat down in the hall and put his head in his hands and wondered what had happened, what was going to happen, and whether they were all going to stay for supper. Then the bell rang again, louder and louder than ever, and he had to run to the door. It was not 4 at all. It was 5. Another dwarf had come along while he was wandering in the hall. He hardly turned the knob before they were all inside, bowing and saying, at your service, one after another. Dori, Nori, Ori, Oin, and Gloin were their names, and very soon 2 purple hoods, a grey hood, a brown hood, and a white hood were hanging on the pegs, and off they marched with their broad hands stuck in their gold and silver belts to join the others. Already it almost had become a throng. Some called for ale, some called for porter, one for coffee, and all of them for cakes, so the hobbit was kept very busy for a while. A big jug of coffee had just been set on the hearth, the seed cakes were gone, the dwarfs were starting in on a round of buttered scones when there came a loud knock, not a ringing, but a hard rat-tat on the hobbit's beautiful green door. Someone was banging with a stick. Bilbo rushed along the passage, very angry and altogether bewildered and bewuthered. This was the most awkward Wednesday he could remember. He pulled open the door with a jerk, and they all fell in, one on top of the other. More dwarves, 4 more. And there was Gandalf, behind, leaning on the staff and laughing. He had made quite a dent on the beautiful door. He had also, by the way, knocked out the secret mark that he had put there this morning. Carefully, carefully, he said. It is not like you, Bilbo, to keep friends waiting on the mat and then open the door like a pop gun. let me introduce Bifor, Bofor, Bombor, and especially Thorin. At your service, said Bifor and Bofor, and Bombor standing in a row. Then they hung up 2 yellow hoods and a pale green one, and also a sky blue one with a long silver tassel. This last belonged to Thorin, an enormously important dwarf. In fact, no other than the great Thorin Oakenshield himself, who was not at all pleased at falling flat on Bilbo's mat with Bofor and Bombor on top of him. For one thing, Bombor was immensely fat and heavy. Thorin indeed was very haughty and said nothing about service, but poor Mr. Baggins said he was sorry so many times at last he grunted pray don't mention it, and stopped frowning. Now we are all here, said Gandalf, looking at the row of 13 hoods, the best detachable party hoods, and his own hat hanging on the pegs. Quite a merry gathering. I hope there is something left for the latecomers to eat and drink. What's that? Tea? Oh, no, thank you. A little red wine, I think, for me. And for me, said Thorin. And raspberry jam and apple tarts, said Bifor. And mince pies and cheese, said Bofor. And pork pie and salad, said Bombor. And more cakes and ale and coffee, if you don't mind, called a few other dwarfs to the door. Put on a few eggs, there's a good fellow, said Gandalf, called after him, as the hobbit stomped off to the pantries. And just bring out the cold chicken and pickles. Seems to know as much about the inside of my larders as I do myself, thought Mr. Baggins, who was feeling positively flummoxed and was beginning to wonder whether a most wretched adventure had not come right into his house. By the time he had gotten all the bottles and dishes and knives and forks and glasses and plates and spoons and things piled up on big trays, he was getting very hot and red in the face and annoyed. Confiscate and bother these dwarves, he said aloud. Why don't they come and lend a hand? Lo and behold, there stood Balin and Dwalin at the door of the kitchen, and Fili and Kili behind them, and before he could say knife, they had whisked away the trays and a couple of small tables into the parlor and set out everything afresh. Gandalf sat at the head of the party, with 13 dwarves all around. Bilbo sat on the stool at the fireside nibbling a biscuit. His appetite was quite taken away, and trying to look as if this was all perfectly ordinary and not in the least an adventure. The dwarves ate and talked, and time got on. At last they pushed their chairs back, and Bilbo made a move to collect the plates and glasses. I suppose you will all stay to supper, he said in his politest, unpressing tones. Of course, said Thorin, and after. We shan't get through the business till late. We must have some music first. Now clear up. Thereupon the 12 dwarves, not Thorin, he was too important, and stayed talking to Gandalf, jumped off their feet and made tall piles of all the things. Off they went, not waiting for trays, balancing columns of plates, each with a bottle on the top with one hand, while the hobbit ran after them, almost squeaking with fright. Be careful! Please don't trouble, I can manage. But the dwarves only started to sing. Tip the glasses, crack the plates, blunt the knives, and bend the forks. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. Smash the bottles, burn the corks. Cut the cloth and tread on the fat. Pour the milk on the pantry floor. Leave the bones on the bedroom mat. Splash wine on every door. Dump the crocks in the bowling bowl. Pound them with a thumping pole. When you finish, if any are whole, send them down the hall with a roll. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates, so carefully with the plates. And of course, they did none of those dreadful things, and everything was cleaned up and put away safe and quick as lightning, while the hobbit was turning round and round in the middle of the kitchen, trying to see what they were doing. Then they went back and found Thorin, with his feet on the fender, smoking a pipe. He was blowing the most enormous smoke rings, and wherever he told them to go, it went up the chimney or behind the clock on the mantelpiece or under the table or around after the ceiling. But wherever it went, it was not quick enough to escape Gandalf. Pop! He sent another smaller smoke ring from his short clay pipe straight through each of Thorin's. Gandalf's smoke rings would go green and come back to hover over the wizard's head. He had quite a cloud of them about him already, and the dim light made him look strange and sorcerous. Bilbo stood and watched. He loved smoke rings, and blushed to think how proud he had been yesterday of the smoke rings he had sent up the wind over the hill. Now for some music, said Thorin. Bring out the instruments. Fili and Kili rushed to their bags and brought back little fiddles. Dory, Nori, and Ori brought out flutes from somewhere inside their coats. Bombor produced a drum from the hall. Bifur and Bofor went out and came back with clarinets that they had left among the walking sticks. Dwalin and Balin said, "Excuse me, I left mine on the porch." "And just bring mine with you," said Thorin. They came back with viols as big as themselves and with Thorin's harp wrapped in a green cloth. It was a beautiful golden harp, and when Thorin struck it, the music began all at once, so sudden and sweet that Bilbo forgot everything else and was swept away into dark lands under strange moons, far over the water and very far from his hobbit hole under the hill. The dark came into the room from the little window that opened in the side of the hill. The firelight flickered. It was April, and still they played on, while the shadow of Gandalf's beard wagged against the wall. The dark filled the room, and the fire died down, and the shadows were lost, and on they played, and suddenly one and then another began to sing. As they played a deep-throated singing of the dwarves, in the deep places of their ancient homes, and this is a fragment of their song, if it can be called a song without their music. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to seek the pale enchanted gold. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells in places deep where dark things sleep in hollow halls beneath the fells. For ancient king and elvish lord, there many a gloaming golden hoard they shaped and wrought, and light they caught to hide in gems on hilt of sword. On silver necklaces they hung the flowering stars, on crowns they hung the dragon's fire, in twisted wire they meshed the light of moon and sun. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to claim our long forgotten gold. Goblets they carved there for themselves, and harps of gold where no man delves. There lay they long, and many a song was sung unheard by men or elves. The pines were roaring in the height, the winds were moaning in the night, the fire was red, it flaming spread, the trees like torches blazed with light. The bells were ringing in the dale, and men looked up with faces pale. The dragon's ire, more fierce than fire, laid low their towers and houses frail. The mountains smoked beneath the moon. The dwarves, they heard the tramp of doom. They fled their halls to dying fall beneath his feet, beneath the moon. Far over the misty mountains grim, to dungeons deep and caverns dim, we must away ere break of day to win our harps and gold from him. As they sang, the hobbit felt love of beautiful things made by hands and by cunning and by magic moving through him, a fierce and jealous love, the desire of the hearts of dwarves. Then something tookish woke up inside him, and he wished to go and see the great mountains, and hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, and explore the caves, and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. He looked out the window. The stars were out in the dark night sky above the trees. He thought of the jewels of the dwarves shining in dark caverns. Suddenly, the wood beyond the water, a flame leapt up, probably someone lighting a wood fire, and he thought of plundering dragons settling on his quiet hill and kindling all to flames. He shuddered, and quickly again he was playing Mr. Baggins of Bag End under hill. He got up trembling. He had less than half a mind to fetch a lamp, and more than half a mind to pretend to, and to go hide behind the beer barrels in the cellar, and not come out again until the dwarves had gone away. Suddenly he found that the music and singing had stopped, and they were all looking at him with eyes shining in the dark. "Where are you going?" said Thorin, in a tone that seemed to show that he guessed both halves of the hobbit's mind. "What about a little light?" said Bilbo apologetically. "We like the dark," said the dwarves. "Dark for dark business. There are many hours before dawn." "Of course," said Bilbo, and sat down in a hurry. He missed the stool and sat down on the fender, knocking over the poker and shovel with a crash. "Hush," said Gandalf. "Let Thorin speak." And this is how Thorin began. "Gandalf, dwarves, and Mr. Baggins, we are not together in the house of our friend and fellow conspirator, this most excellent and audacious hobbit. May the hair on his toes never fall out. All praise the wine and ale. He paused for breath and for a polite remark from the hobbit, but the compliments were quite lost on poor Bilbo Baggins, who was wagging his mouth in protest at being called audacious and, worst of all, fellow conspirator. Although no sound came out, he was so flummoxed. So Thorin went on. We are met to discuss our plans, our ways, means, policies, and devices. We shall soon before the break of day start upon our long journey, a journey for which some of us, perhaps all of us, except our friend and counselor, the ingenious wizard Gandalf, may never return. It is a solemn moment. Our object is, I take it, well known to all of us, to the estimable Mr. Baggins, and perhaps to one or two of the younger dwarves. I think I should be right in naming Killian Philly, for instance. The exact situation at the moment may require a little brief explanation. This was Thorin's style. He was an important dwarf, and if he had been allowed, he would probably have gone on like this until he was out of breath without telling anyone there anything that they did that was not known already. But he was rudely interrupted. Poor Bilbo couldn't bear it any longer. At may never return. This PDF is awful. Sorry, breaking out of this. This PDF is awful. We will find another PDF to read because this has so many typos in it because it was scanned very poorly. Anyway. He began to feel a shriek coming up inside, and very soon it burst out like a whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel. All of the doors sprang up, knocking over the table. Gandalf struck a blue light at the end of his magic staff, and in its firework glare, the poor little hobbit could be seen kneeling on the hearthrug, shaking like jelly that was melting. Then he fell flat on the floor and kept calling out, "Struck by lightning! Struck by lightning!" over and over again, and that was all they could get out of him for a long time. So they took him and laid him out of the way in on the drawing room sofa with a drink at his elbow, and then they went back to their dark business. "Excitable little fellow," said Gandalf as they sat down. "Gets funny queer fits, but he's one of the best. One of the best. As fierce as a dragon in a pinch. If you've ever seen a dragon in a pinch, you will realize this was only poetical exaggeration when applied to a hobbit. Even old Took's great-grand-uncle Bullroarer, who was so huge for a hobbit that he could ride a horse. He had charged the ranks of the goblins of Mount Graham at the Battle of the Green Fields and knocked their king Galfernbard's head clean off with a wooden club. It sailed 100 yards through the air, went down a rabbit hole, and in this way the battle was won and the game of golf invented in the same moment. In the meanwhile, however, Bullroarer's gentler descendant was reviving in the drawing room. After a while and a drink, he crept nervously to the door of the parlor. This is where he heard Gloin speaking, humph, or some snort more or less like that. "Will he do it, you think? It's all very well and good for Gandalf to talk about this hobbit being fierce, but one shriek like that in a moment of excitement would be enough to wake the dragon and all of his relatives and kill the lot of us. I think it sounded more like fright than excitement. In fact, if it had not been for the sign on the door, I should have been sure we had come to the wrong place. As soon as I clapped my eyes on that little fellow bobbing and puffing on the mat, I had my doubts. He looks more like a grocer than a burglar." Then Mr. Baggins turned the handle and went in. The Took side had won. He suddenly felt he would go without bed and breakfast to be thought of as fierce. As for a little fellow bobbing on the mat, it almost made him really fierce. Many times afterwards, the Baggins part regretted what he did now, and he put himself, and he said it to himself, "Bilbo, you were a fool. You walked right in and put your foot in it." "Pardon me," he said. "If I've overheard the words that you were saying, I don't pretend to understand what you're talking about or your reference to burglars, but I think I am right in believing," this is what he called being on his dignity, "that you think I am no good. I will show you. I have no sign to my door. I painted it a week ago, and I'm quite sure that you have come to the wrong house. As soon as I saw your funny faces at my doorstep, I had my doubts, but treat it as the right one. Tell me what you want done, and I will try if I have to walk from here to the east of East and fight the wild wereworms in the last desert. I had a great grand uncle once Broroar took, and yes, but that was a very long time ago, said Gloin. I was talking about you, and I assure you there is a mark on your door, the usual one for the trade, or used to be. Burglar wants, good job, plenty of excitement, reasonable reward. That's how you usually read it. You say expert treasure hunter instead of burglar, if you like. Some of them do. It's all the same to us. Gandalf told us that there was a man of the sorts in these parts looking for a job at once, and he had arranged a meeting here this Wednesday at tea time. Of course there is a mark, said Gandalf. I put it there myself. For very good reasons. You asked me to find the 14th man for your expedition, and I chose Mr. Baggins. Just let anyone say I chose the wrong man or wrong house, and you can stop at 13 and have all the bad luck you like, or go back to digging coal. He scowled so angrily at Gloin that the dwarf huddled back in his chair. When Bilbo tried to open his mouth to ask a question, he turned and frowned at him and stuck out his bushy eyebrows till Bilbo shut his mouth with a snap. That's right, said Gandalf. Let's have no more argument. I have chosen Mr. Baggins, and that ought to be enough for all of you. If I say he is a burglar he is, or will be when the time comes. There's a lot more in him than you guess, and a deal more than he has any idea of himself. You may possibly all live to thank me yet. Now, Bilbo, my boy, fetch a lamp. Let's have a little light on this. On the table, in the light of the big lamp with a red shade, he spread a piece of parchment rather like a map. This was made by Thror, your grandfather, Thorin, he said in answer to the dwarf's excited questions. It is a plan of the mountain. I don't see that this will help us much, said Thorin disappointedly after a glance. I remember the mountain well enough and the lands about it, and I know where Mirkwood is and the weathered heath where the great dragons breed. There is a dragon marked in red on the side of the mountain, said Balin, but it would be easy enough to find him without that if we arrive there. There's one point that you haven't noticed, said the wizard, and that is the secret entrance. You see that rune on the west side and the hand pointing to it from the other runes? That marks a hidden passage to the lower halls. May have been secret once, said Thorin, but how do we know it's secret any longer? Old Smaug has lived there long enough to know now to find out everything there is to know about those caves. He may, but he can't have used it for years and years. Why? Because it's too small. 5 feet high the door, and 3 may walk abreast, says the runes, but Smaug could not creep into a hole that size, not even when he was a young dragon, and certainly not after devouring so many dwarves and men of Dale. Seems a great hole to me, squeaked Bilbo, who had no experience with dragons and only of hobbit holes. He was getting excited and interested again, and so forgot to keep his mouth shut. He loved maps, and in his hall there hung a large one of the country round, with all his favorite walks marked in red ink. How could a large door be kept secret from everybody outside, apart from the dragon, he asked. He was only a little hobbit, you must remember. In lots of ways, said Gandalf, but in what way this one has been hidden, we don't know without going to see. From what it says on the map, I should guess there is a closed door which has been made to look exactly like the side of the mountain. That is the usual dwarf's method, I think. Isn't that right? Quite so, said Thorin. Also, went on Gandalf, I forgot to mention that with the map went a key, a small and curious key. Here it is, he said, and handed it to Thorin. Handed to Thorin a key with a long barrel and intricate wards made of silver. Keep it safe. Indeed I will, said Thorin, and fastened it upon a fine chain that hung about his neck under his jacket. Now things begin to look more hopeful. This news alters them much for the better. So far we had no clear idea what to do. We thought of going east as quiet and carefully as we could as far as Long Lake. After that, the trouble would begin. A long time before that, if I know anything about the lands east, interrupted Gandalf. We might go from there up the river running, went on Thorin, taking no notice. And so it's the ruins of Dale, the old town in the valley there under the shadow of the mountain. But we none of us like the idea of the front gate. The river runs out of it through the great cliffs at the south of the mountain, and out of it comes a dragon far too often unless he has changed. That would be no good, said the wizard, not without a mighty warrior or even a hero, and I tried to find one, but warriors are busy fighting one another in distant lands, and in this neighborhood heroes are scarce or simply not to be found. Swords in these parts are mostly blunt, and axes are used for trees, and shields as cradles or dish covers, and dragons are comfortably far off, and therefore legendary. That is why I chose burglary, especially when I remembered the existence of a side door. And here is our little Bilbo Baggins, the burglar, the chosen and selected burglar. And now let us get on and make some plans. Very well then, said Thorin. Supposing the burglar expert gives us some ideas or suggestions, he turned with mock politeness to Bilbo. First, I should like to know a bit more about things, said he, feeling all confused and a little bit shaky inside, but so far still tookishly determined to go on with things. I mean about the gold and the dragon and all that, and how it got there, and who it belongs to, and so on and further. Bless me, said Thorin. Haven't you got the map? Didn't you hear our song? And haven't we been talking about all of this for hours? All the same, I should like it to be made plain and clear, he said, obstinately, putting on his business manner, usually reserved for people who tried to borrow money off of him, and doing his best to appear wise and prudent like a professional and live up to Gandalf's recommendation. Also, I should like to know of the risk, out-of-pocket expenses, time required, remuneration, and so forth, by which he meant, what am I going to get out of it, and am I going to come back alive? Oh, very well, said Thorin. Long ago, in my grandfather Thor's time, our family was driven out of the far north and came with all of their wealth and their tools to this mountain on the map. It had been discovered by my far ancestor, Thrain the Old, but now they mined it, and they tunneled, and they made huger halls and greater workshops, and in addition, I believe they found a good deal of gold, and a great many jewels, too. Anyway, they grew immensely rich and famous, and my grandfather was king under the mountain again, and treated with great reverence by the mortal men who had lived to the south, and were gradually spreading up the running river as far as the valley overshadowed by the mountain. They built the merry town of Dale there in those days. Kings used to send for our smiths and reward even the least skillful most richly. Fathers would beg us to take their sons as apprentices and pay us handsomely, especially in food supplies, which we never bothered to grow or find for ourselves. Altogether, those were good days for us, and the poorest of us had money to spend and lend, and leisure to make beautiful things just for the fun of it, not to speak of the most marvelous and magical toys, the likes of which have never been found in the world nowadays. So my grandfather's halls became full of armor and jewels and carvings and cups, and the toy market of Dale was the wonder of the north. Undoubtedly, that is what brought the dragon. Dragons steal gold and jewels, you know, from men and elves and dwarves, wherever they can find them. They guard their plunder as long as they live, which is practically forever unless they're killed, and never enjoy a brass ring of it. Indeed, they hardly know a good bit of work from bad, although they usually have a good notion of the current market value, and they can't make a thing for themselves, not even mend a loose scale in their armor. There are lots of dragons in the north in those days, and gold was probably getting scarce up there with the dwarves flying south or getting killed, and all the general waste and destruction that the dragons were making was going from bad to worse. There was a most especially greedy, strong, and wicked worm called Smaug. One day he flew up into the air and came south. The first we heard of it was a noise like a hurricane coming from the north, and the pine trees on the mountain creaking and cracking in the wind. Some dwarves who happened to be outside, I was one luckily a fine adventurous lad in those days, always wandering about, and it saved my life that day. Well, from a good way off, we saw the dragon settle on our mountain in a spout of flame, and then he came down the slopes, and when he reached the woods, they all went up in fire. By the time all the bells were ringing in Dale and the warriors were arming, the dwarves rushed out of their great gate, but there was a dragon waiting for them. None escaped that way. The river rushed up into the stream, and a fog fell on Dale, and in the fog the dragon came on them and destroyed most of the warriors, the usual and happy story. It was too common in those days. Then he went back and crept through the front gate and routed out all the halls and lanes and tunnels and alleys and cellars and mansions and passages. After that, there were no dwarves left alive inside, and he took all of their wealth for himself. Probably, for this is the dragon's way, he has it piled up in a great heap far inside and sleeps on it for a bed. Later, he used to crawl out of the great gate and come by night to Dale and carry away people, especially maidens, to eat, till Dale was ruined and all the people were dead or gone. What goes on there now, I don't know for certain, but I don't suppose anyone lives near to the mountain and the far edge of Long Lake nowadays. The few of us that were well outside sat and wept in hiding and cursed Smog, and there we were unexpectedly joined by my father and my grandfather with singed beards. They looked very grim, but they said very little. When I asked how they'd gotten away, they told me to hold my tongue and said that one day, with the proper time, I should know. After that, we went away, and we've had to earn our livings as best we could up and down the lands, often enough sinking low as blacksmith work or even coal mining. But we've never forgotten our stolen treasure, and even now, when I will allow to have a good bit laid by, we are not so badly off. Here, Thorn stroked the gold chain around his neck. We still mean to get it back and to bring our curses home to Smog if we can. I've often wondered about my father and my grandfather's escape. I see now they must have had a private side door, which only they knew about, but apparently they made a map, and I should like to know how Gandalf got a hold of it and why it did not come to me, the rightful heir. I did not get a hold of it. I was given it, said the wizard. Your grandfather, Thror, was killed, as you remember, in the mines of Moria by Azog the Goblin. Curse his name, yes, said Thorin. And Thrain, your father, went away on the 21st of April, 100 years ago last Thursday, and has never been seen since. True, true, said Thorin. Well, your father gave me this to give to you, and if I have chosen my own time and way of handling it, you can hardly blame me, considering the trouble I have gone to find you. Your father could not remember his own name when he gave me the paper, and never told me yours. So on the whole, I think I ought to be praised and thanked. Here it is, he said, handing the map to Thorin. I don't understand, said Thorin, and Bilbo felt he would have liked to say the same. The explanation did not seem to explain. Your grandfather, said the wizard slowly and grimly, gave the map to his son for safety before he went to the mines of Moria. Your father went away to try his luck with the map after your grandfather was killed, and had lots of adventures of a most unpleasant sort he had, but he never got near the mountain. How he got there I don't know, but I found him a prisoner in the dungeons of the necromancer. Whatever were you doing there? Said Thorin with a shudder, and all the dwarves shivered. Never you mind. I was finding things out as usual, and a nasty, dangerous business it was. Even I, Gandalf, only just escaped. I had tried to save your father, but it was too late. He was witless and wandering, and had long forgotten almost everything except the map and the key. We have long ago paid the goblins of Moria, said Thorin. We must give a thought to the necromancer. Don't be absurd. He is an enemy quite beyond the powers of all the dwarves put together if they should be collected again from all the corners of the world. The one thing your father wished was for his son to read the map and use the key. The dragon and the mountain are more than big enough tests for you. Hear, hear, said Bilbo, and accidentally said it out loud. Hear what? Dale said, turning suddenly towards him, and he was so flustered that he answered, Hear what I've got to say. What's that? They asked. Well, I should say that you ought to go east and have a look around. Suppose there is a side door, and the dragons must sleep sometimes, I suppose. You sit on the doorstep long enough, I dare say you will think of something, and well, don't you know, I think we have talked long enough for one night, if you see what I mean. What about bed and an early start and all that? I'll give you a good breakfast before you go. Before we go, I suppose you mean, said Thorin. Aren't you the burglar, and isn't sitting on the doorstep your job, not to speak of getting inside the door? But I agree about bed and breakfast. I like my eggs with ham, and when starting our journey, fried, not poached. And mind you don't break 'em. After all the others had ordered their breakfast without so much as a please, which annoyed Bilbo very much, they got up, and the hobbit had to find room for them all, and filled all his spare rooms, and made beds on chairs and sofas before he got them all stowed, and went to his own little bed, very tired and not altogether happy. One thing he did make his mind up about was not to bother to get up early and cook everybody else's wretched breakfast. The tokenishness was wearing off, and he was not now quite so sure that he was going on any journey in the morning. As he lay in his bed, he could still hear Thorin still humming to himself in the best bedroom next to him. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to find our long-forgotten gold. Bilbo went to sleep with that in his ears, and it gave him very uncomfortable dreams. And it was long after the break of day when he woke up. All right. So that was chapter 1. We're going to find a better version of this, because this version was awful and was very hard to read. But yeah, so the point of this is practice. So I apologize. I am not the best reader aloud that exists, but the hope is to get better, and this seems like a long and good enough project and a worthy project to get better on. So thank you for joining me on this practice, and we have almost exactly an hour on our stream, so that's wonderful. To those who wish to continue, we will be still doing every other stream as a reading stream. Well, let me take that back. Every other planned stream as a reading stream. I've taken down the schedule. I have to figure out a better way to keep a schedule that fits with the work I have to do for school. So we'll figure that out as we go. So, but every other planned stream will be a reading stream. We will continue The Hobbit. We'll try and be consistent with it. Intersperse it with math and unplanned streams of gaming, just, for fun. At any rate, thank you so much to everyone who ducked in, ducked out, stayed for a little while, hopefully enjoyed yourselves. I'm not always the best reader, but I appreciate those who came by to at least explore it. Yeah, so we will keep going. We will continue. You are quite welcome. As I said, hopefully I will get better as time goes on, and that's why you practice these things. So, The Hobbit is one of my favorites. I actually, in a lot of ways, like The Hobbit, better than The Lord of the Rings. It's got more of a the writing has a little bit more of a personality to it, I think, than Lord of the Rings, which is more of a straight telling of a tale. But at any rate, so yeah, have a good evening to everyone. I'm gonna go down and hang out with my dog, who is lonely on the couch by himself, and I will see you again at the next stream. All right.